What's up, guys? It's the Warhammer here, and today we're cracking open the Infernus Marines plus Paint's Warhammer kit. Before we dive in, let's talk about Space Marine details for a second. You're going to see a lot of iconic features in this kit. The Aquila, or Imperial Eagle, on the chest plate symbolizes loyalty to the Emperor, and while the Ultramarines chapter badge, a white omega on a blue background, represents the heritage of the Sons of Guilliman. We've got 3 miniatures, and I'm walking you through 3 phases of painting. Starting basic, going all the way up to using everything in my collection. It's gonna be fun, and probably messy, but that's half the charm. Let's open this thing. Cutting out figures can be really tedious and hard to do, but if you do it the right way, putting the flat edge of the clippers against the part you're trying to cut, then you won't have to do as much work to clean up the bodies or whatever you're cutting out. Once you cut out all of these figures, or just the ones that you're going to build, then you'll apply them to bases, which have holes in them. These are all push fit, but most Space Marine models are glued together. In the last part, I will be using glue, so if you're just starting out, then focus on the first part. Sometimes they won't go together that well. The pieces will be too small, or maybe too big, or maybe you just didn't put them in the right spot. You could be using other arms from other figures, which could be the problem, or just some other totally different thing that I'm not covering. I would suggest keeping the arms off until after you've painted the body. That way there's not weird gray spots in between the arms and the body where you couldn't get to with your brush. Once all 3 figures are all the way together, or mostly together, then you'll want to get black paint out. The black paint is basically primer, because we have no primer. Knowing Games Workshop, they skipped it for a reason, also known as cash. So we're working with what we've got. For this first figure, I will be just using the kit. That means the brush, the paints, and the sheer will to make it work. The brush is a starter brush, which means it is not going to work for very long. It uses synthetic hairs instead of normal ones, which I don't really know what those are called. They hook a lot easier and will split. So this brush will probably only last you through 3 or 4 figures. I would suggest, if you want to get into the hobby more, getting a new brush from the Army Painter or one of the nicer Citadel ones. Now that the black base coat is almost fully applied, I will talk about how to put the Macrage Blue on. The Macrage Blue is just like all the other Citadel paints, but if you want it to look good, then you're going to want to use very little. Just put your brush into the thing once, take out a little bit, and use that for as much as possible. Not so it's too thin, and not so you can see the black really well, but enough so it's just a thin layer over the black. I will show this in a second, but first I gotta get back to finishing this black, you would call it primer, maybe. Before we do the Macrage Blue, we're going to have to do the technical dust on the base. This is Armageddon dust, not technical dust. Technical is the kind of paint it is. Once you open it, you'll see something that looks like wet sand. It will dry, just smear it over the base like I'm doing right now. If you use too much, it'll look too clumpy. If you do too little, it'll look black. So just use a little bit, more than you would use of paints, but not too much. It is basically a paint, and you want it to cover just right. Now we finally start with the Macrage Blue. I'm thinning out the Macrage Blue, basically using less paint so it spreads smoothly. If you've ever slapped on thick paint and lost all those crisp details, you know why thinning is key. And speaking of details, let's take a look at the Aquila, our Imperial Eagle on the chest plate. It's a symbol of loyalty to the Emperor and marks them as warriors of humanity. As for the brush in the box, it's, well, not winning any awards, but we're getting by. Let's talk about the Ultramarines for a sec. The Sons of Gilliman and their heraldry is iconic in Warhammer, basically the poster boys of Games Workshop. The thing about Ultramarines is everybody doesn't like them. Not everybody, but most people. And just because they have blue armor or look like little smurfs isn't a reason to hate them. They're pretty cool. They got Titus, they got most main characters, and they're also literally on every box. If you ever see a dead Space Marine on a base, it's probably an Ultramarine. The Omega symbol, which is the horseshoe-looking thing on the shoulder pad, is the emblem of the Ultramarines chapter. It represents their connection to Ultramar, the region in space they protect. As for the armor, it's all about clean lines and chunky panels, perfect for picking out details we paint. Now I'll put on the Bethalstar Gold. This is the gold color for the trim and the Aquila symbol. It's not as good as some of the golds that I have, like Greedy Gold from Army Painter or Bright Gold, but it works. The gold will want to be applied, not too much, just enough so it covers the eagle, and nowhere else outside of the eagle. It's hard to tell where the eagle ends sometimes, so make sure that the blue isn't too thick so you can't tell. Now I will put black on the tube since there's no silver. Next, I'll put white in the eyes. The reason I'm using white is because I don't have red. I will bring red in later in the video, but it doesn't come in the kit, so I can't use it. Now I'll be adding more metal to the sides of the helmet and the vents on the backpack. After this, I will start painting the arms, which are going to be a lot harder because of the weird flamer thingy, and because we don't have the right colors to paint it in this kit. But for now, I'll be adding black. Wait, that's not paint, that's a wash. A wash is basically a thinned out paint. It goes into the cracks and makes it look like shadows. It works really well for making the armor look more realistic, with deeper shadows, and making a matte-looking model stick out more. When using it in cracks, it can help enhance the realness of the model. Instead of the model looking like a piece of plastic with some really expensive paint on it, it looks like an actual person. And if it was bigger, it could be. Now we build the arms. These I will not put on until they're finished painting, or I will put them on and then paint. Depends on how I'm feeling today. This might be one of the hardest parts for beginners, getting the white on the symbols. The triangular symbol on the left arm, well, right arm if you're the person, is basically saying what their battlefield role is. The triangle symbol usually means line of battle, or they fight in the battle lines, which is just lines of Space Marines fighting whatever enemy they have to go against. On the other side, it's the Ultramarine symbol, the horseshoe-shaped one, called the Omega symbol. These should both be painted white, but you can always paint it another color if you want. there we go. It's basic, but that blue really makes the figure come to life. If you're on a budget, or just getting into the hobby, this kit gets you painting, and that's what counts. If I had purple, I would have put it on the gun to make it look more worn, like it'd been fired a lot. The gun is a pyre blaster, or a flamethrower. The eyes I would have made red, and I would have added a different color gold and used metal coloring, like silver, for the gun, like I did on this figure. The one with the flame coming out of its weapon is an older figure, not from this kit. I'll teach you how to do that in another video. Now on to the next figure. This one we'll be using brush on primer for. It's my own custom kind mixed with black paint. Don't use too much because it can cake in the recesses and make details less able to see. Black primer helps because if you're using a thinned out blue, then you don't have to use as much blue. It helps it look a little more worn and dark. Now we have the technical Armageddon dust, but we have a little surprise. A brush, or a piece of brush, a bush. We'll add this just to give it a little more flair. I would also add the Agrax Earth Shade to the sand to make it stick out a little more, and a lot of it if you want to make it look like dirt. Now we will use a speed paint from Army Painter, Grim Black. This we will put in the pieces between the armor. It works better for me because it leaves a little bit lighter on the top to look like there's shadows. Instead of using a wash, I can use this for the black parts. Now we start with the Mirage Blue. This we have to keep thin so we don't use too much. Mirage Blue is a great color, but if it's caked on there, it looks really weird, and some of the different layers can be darker than others. The Ultramarines' blue armor isn't just for show, though. It speaks to their discipline and organization as a chapter. Their purity seals, the little wax-stamped ribbons with paper hanging off them on their armor. There aren't any on these three figures, but if you get into it a little more, you'll see it on all the Space Marines. But those symbols symbolize their faith and commitment to the Emperor and to the Codex Astartes, a rulebook for the Space Marines, written by their Primarch, Rabute Guilliman. Guilliman is a Primarch. There are 20-something other Primarchs, and they each have their own chapter of Space Marines. They all went missing right after their creation by the Emperor, and then many were brought back. During the Horus Heresy, where one of the most powerful Primarchs rose up and defied his father and revolted, half of the Primarchs joined Chaos, and half the Primarchs stayed with the Emperor. Guilliman was a hero, and his chapter, the Ultramarines, helped keep the Imperium from falling apart. This is the second figure. I'd say he turned out pretty well. He looks like most of my other Space Marines, maybe a little better. But there's one more left, and you'll be so surprised when you see him. Now we start on the last figure. I'll make his base with some more advanced things, including skulls and army painter base things. I will also use super glue from the army painter. I added barbed wire from the army painter also. This is the finished product. The painting took a long time. As you look at his legs, he has dirt from stepping on the ground, and I added a rock under his feet. He is a sergeant, and his gun is a lot more advanced than the other ones. I will keep adding to him in the future, but for now, I'm tired of painting these little minis. I'm going to take a break. Thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing and leaving a like. I've enjoyed making these videos, and I really hope to see you guys in the future. All these subscribers really helps inflate my ego. Help me get my ideas out. Yeah. Well, see you in the next one. Go get this kit if you want to get into Warhammer. Warhammer out.